Welcome to the Essence of the Soul.
A safe haven for all souls.
My name is Linda.
And my name is Paris. And welcome to
Season
season 2. We're so excited to finally share something that we've been working on. And we have been, if you've been keeping up with us, we have mentioned this already. We started and branched off a crystal business.
Yes, which is the Essence of Crystals.
Yes. And we're so excited to share this because this is something that we have thought of doing for about 2 years now, ever since we got into crystals and crystal healing and things like that. So we're super excited to share this with you, and we can't wait to share more about the Essence of Crystals.
Yeah, so I guess we can just kind of dive into how we even started the Essence of Crystals, right?
Yeah.
And this ties in very closely with the Essence of the Soul, which is why we branched off. And if you remember episode 1 of Paris and I's story of how this all started, this started back in February 2022, where we were having, spending time together. And that's when we both had like a spiritual awakening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a very, very sacred story to us that we're super excited to share with you guys. But it's really, this is just what happened. Like all of a sudden, and this is when we found our colors. Like if you watch The Essence of the Soul, like that episode, we talk about all of those things. And this is how it all really started with us and our spiritual awakening and things like that. Because we had a very sacred journey together where we were just in my room in college. And if you have seen my room, it's very colorful and very...
She had all the lights, the tapestry, all the crystals.
Yeah, very decorative and just very colorful everything. And so that night we were just hanging out, just the two of us. And all of a sudden I was like, I have a lot of things in my room, and like I don't really show it off that often either, but like I was like, there's this jewelry box that I bought, and it was kind of like marble-ish or like kind of crystal-y, like formed. And inside of it, I just like threw a bunch of like crystal jewelry and like some of my crystals in there. And I was just like, okay, yeah, like I'll show you, like I'll put it on my bed. And even more ironic was that on the jewelry box was a sun and a moon.
Yeah.
And I even had the sun and the moon, like tapestry, everything. So
Yes.
everything was all connected like that night. But from there, I just like kind of poured it all on the bed. And all of a sudden we were like, oh my God, this is like treasure.
Yeah, it felt like treasure. And we were also playing with the oracle cards. I
Yeah.
remember that day Paris was like, oh yeah, like these are all my oracle cards. And we're just kind of like, picking cards and choosing which ones like intuitively. And it just turned out that like every card that we chose resonated so deeply with our current energy.
Yeah.
And so it almost felt like a game. We're like, oh my God, this is so fun. We put all the cards together, like my side, Paris's side. And it was like so crazy to the point where we're like, oh my God, what we can do is use the crystals to create art. And so we were putting the crystals like according to like the oracle card that came out and everything.
Yeah.
And at the end of that, it was just such a beautiful story that was created with the crystals and the oracle cards together.
The crazy thing was that at the time we didn't have like a huge collection of crystals. Like
She had the most, of course. And then like that's when I started getting a little bit into it. I had a few here and there. And so one thing that we had in common with our crystals was this spirit quartz.
Yeah.
It's like a type of crystal that we had. And mine was, a little bit bigger. And hers was actually a part of a necklace, right?
Yeah, so mine was a pendant. So if you know what spirit quartz looks like, there's different forms of it, but these were just tiny little spirit quartz, like tiny
Points.
Yeah. And mine was in a wired wrapping pendant, and it was so beautiful. I bought it like maybe 2 years before that. And she had a spirit quartz, like she just had bought it. And
it's funny because I actually didn't buy it intentionally. It came with a set. It was like a Valentine's set.
That's right.
Yeah, and I was like, oh shit, we have the same crystal.
And I looked at it, I was like, oh my God, yours looks so masculine.
Yeah, I'm like, oh, mine looks so like me.
And mine looks just like me.
And so the interesting thing is, like, I think this was like the first card that we pulled in the Oracle Angel Guide deck. So my card was like a girl with like an armor and a shield. And so I was like, oh my God. Was it you that put it in like the shield or something? And Paris was like, oh my God, it fits literally in the shield.
Like perfect in the shield.
So my spirit quartz was basically like a shield.
And it was just, oh my God, we have to show you guys a photo too. But
yeah,
it's funny because then my first card, which is funny because I didn't actually pull out this card or like shuffle this card. It was that like earlier in that day, I saw that card. And maybe I might have pulled it out already, like earlier that day. And then I was like, oh, like I was telling her right away, I was like, yeah, I was waiting to use this deck, but this is the first card that I got. And the card was Inner Child Healing. And it was like a little, like a figure or like a person who was holding a baby. And it's inner child healing. So you're healing your inner child, right? And she was holding the baby. And then there's like this moon around her and everything. And then my pendant looked like a baby, like in the wire wrapping, and it was like formed in her baby. So my pendant was perfectly formed in her baby, and then her pendant was perfectly formed in the shield.
Yeah.
And it was just, I don't know, like
it was so crazy. And then like this is where the art came from, was like kind of just putting the crystals to like the cards accordingly. And at the end of that, it was so beautiful. We're like, wow, like we should create a crystal kingdom.
Yes. And I mean, from there, I think a few months passed by and like we had like another type of journey like this again with the crystals, because at this point now, like maybe 5-6 months down the road, we had a huge collection of crystals. And from there we were like, okay, like we should start a business, because we started watching like Instagram lives.
It was a daily thing. It was like every single day watching crystal lives, buying crystals. And I'm like, if we're buying this many crystals, we might as well
do it ourselves.
Start it ourselves, and we can enjoy having it. And I kind of like the idea of doing crystal lives myself too, and I think we both enjoyed that. And so one day we were just like on your iPad, we're like, oh, we should like draft a logo. And we started that like halfway, and then like of course like life goes on, and we just never really thought about it again.
I mean, we were college students, like we didn't have
school.
all the time in the world to think about that. And at the same time, I think we did come up with like that sun and moon concept, and
we did.
We had all these ideas already. We had the colors and everything, because we journeyed with the colors too. So everything was connected with the crystals, the cards, the colors. Like we have our own individual colors, our own individual personalities that kind of tied and mirrored each other and like kind of formed like in a yin and yang type of situation. So we had all the ideas and the the story behind it, but it was about forming the actual business. And from there, and then also learning how to buy inventory, learning how to like
finding vendors, where to source from, and like all of the behind the scenes of starting a business, like legally as well.
And choosing our audience, and also like knowing who is watching us, right? So we're very, very grateful, because we started this platform with the podcast first. And this is kind of where we, got the attention first, which was, okay, people are watching us. We're spreading the spirituality, the knowledge. And now we're here to share something that we're extremely passionate about, which is the crystals. And I think this is something that's very important to the both of us. And I think also something that's getting bigger in the community. I know a lot of people want to learn more about how to use crystals, and it's becoming more of like a common thing. So I think this is just us here, ready to share our knowledge, our experiences,
share our passion and our love for crystals, and how it's helped us in our healing journey, and hopefully that can help you as well.
Exactly. And I mean, before that, our name was Crystal Kingdom.
And for like, even when we started thinking more about like, oh, should we actually make this an actual business, because we've been talking about it for the past 2 years. And so it kind of started like, okay, we started the podcast, and after a couple months, I'm like, wow, like, like we should just, start a business together. Might as well. And like, we already have a platform that's perfect to, share our knowledge and also reach out to the people that are kind of on a similar journey to us of like awakening and like self-discovery. And so we're like, what should we name it? I think like we were talking about this for a while, like, oh, like, should we have like a completely different name for it? And then one day we're like, you know what? Why don't we just branch off?
Yeah.
And that's where it started.
The Essence of Crystals.
Exactly.
Just like the essence of the soul. So it just really made sense to us. And I don't know. I just feel really blessed, I guess, to have this. So check out our crystal business. It's, we're still starting and we're still learning. And I think one thing we're really passionate about right now is actually creating like sacred jewelry for you guys. So stay tuned for that as well.
Yeah, that'll be very exciting. It's coming soon. But there's been a lot of questions regarding how to use crystals. What are crystals used for and what is it? I know a lot of people like to call them rocks. But yeah, there is a difference. And so the way we use crystals is to heal energetically. So crystal healing is like an alternative like healing modality that you can use by the concept of the metaphysical side of crystals. So a little thing about crystals is that each crystal, depending on what kind of material it is, what kind of mineral, what color, what shape, size it is, it all has a specific energy and frequency that it holds. And if you know about energy, of course, like energy cannot be destroyed or created. It can only be transferred and
transformed.
Yeah, exactly. And so same thing, same concept with crystals. When you have crystals within your energetic field, it can enhance your vibration or help you in a specific way. And so with crystals, they all play a different role in how you can use it to heal you. Sometimes you can use it for meditation. You can use it intentionally. And we can kind of go into that a little bit more. When you buy a crystal, like what should you do to like actually have it help you in life too?
I think like if you are starting to get into crystals, like the biggest thing I always say is like honestly just look at which one you are the most drawn to, because that's your intuition that's working. And it's also not just you choosing that crystal, but that crystal is also choosing you. So it kind of depends also like on the shape and the color. So let's say like you're really into a rose quartz heart, right? And in that sense, at the same time, it's honestly just because that crystal is choosing you because maybe you need a little more self-love in your life, or maybe like a romantic love in your life and you're just drawn to it. You don't understand and you didn't know what the property was, right? Or, like different things too, like moonstone, right? Like you are drawn to this white moonstone because maybe you're looking to conceive a baby or something like that, but you didn't know that. But it's like these things, like you have to trust your intuition with picking and choosing crystals because they also choose you, so they have an energetic like lock to you too sometimes. Like it's like you look at Crystal Shop or Crystal Live or whatever it is, right? And you're like, oh my God, I really like this one. Like there's a reason why. And it's because that property is here to help you. It's here to help heal and to like just be a part of your journey, your healing journey. So just know that it's not just you choosing it, it's also choosing you. And I think, like my biggest thing for like meditation is, and you'll kind of figure this out on your own, like what you like there's different shapes and different, like meanings behind it. So like the spheres, right? And it's funny because me and Linda, when we first started getting into crystals, she bought a sphere.
A rose quartz sphere.
Yeah.
And I remember Paris really liked it. It was angel aura.
Oh yeah.
Rose quartz. And you're like, wow, like I love it. I'm like, yeah, like spheres are so good because they radiate energy all throughout. Yeah. So that's why she was like, oh my God, at the time you didn't have a lot of spheres.
Yeah,
yet, too.
I didn't.
I think that's why you really liked it. And I'm like, yeah, I really like the spheres,
Yeah. And you also got the carnelian sphere too.
That thing was actually later on.
Oh, yeah.
So it's interesting. I wanted to talk about this little side story. That same night, I pulled that card with the shield. It was courage and bravery.
Yeah.
So I'm like, wow, like that's kind of like me needing to step out of my shell and like having the courage and bravery to put myself out there more. And so for some reason, I was really drawn to the carnelians. I didn't know why at the time. I was
Yes.
like, oh my
Oh
God,
my
I just
gosh.
love the carnelian so much, like that orange, fiery energy. Like, I don't know why. And then when I started learning more about carnelian, that's exactly what it's for. It's for courage and bravery. And I'm
Yes.
like, oh my gosh. Crystals really do resonate with, the type of frequency that you need in your life or like kind of where you're at in life too.
Exactly. And I remember that story. That story was so beautiful to me because I just remember the day when Linda was like, Paris, I keep looking at this carnelian. Like she kept saying that. And I was like, I wasn't even familiar with carnelian at the time. I was like, oh, it's so interesting because that's not really like a crystal where like, the beginners
The
would
typical,
look. Yeah.
crystals,
And when
yeah.
I saw that, because I remember, I mean, we talked about this in the very first episode, which was like, oh, maybe your color's that orangey, right?
Yeah.
And she was so into that. And like, also crystals, like the colors and stuff also connects with the chakras and things like that. So she was very connected to her sacral chakra too. And it's just so interesting because yes, the courage and bravery, even though she didn't know that that was the property. So she
Yeah.
was already drawn to it. And you see, that's your intuition or even your higher self is telling you like, I like this type of crystal. I want to go get it because I know it's going to help me in my life. So that's a beautiful example. So yeah, and like I guess how to use crystals, like a lot of times you'll use it in meditations, right?
Yep.
I want to promote meditation a lot because this is really good for you, especially if you are an overthinker or you're stressed about work or different things like that. Using crystals in meditation is a big like game changer. Like it enhances everything. It's not only you, kind of like diving into like a deeper dimension, but at the same time the crystal is here to also help either ground you or take you, even further. Like in your meditation, it kind of depends like on the crystal, right, that you're using. So some people use like those grounded crystals. Like I have a hematite and an obsidian that I always use, and those are very grounding crystals. So even though you're meditating, you're also staying grounded so that you can be expansive, right? But at the same time, some people will use like a seraphinite and a charoite because those are like magical angelic crystals where they can kind of help you be more expansive.
And connect you to the angelic realms.
Exactly. So it's all intentional and you kind of have to study the properties. Like this is not something that me and Linda were like, we just automatically knew everything.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, we continue to study it.
Research, and kind of test it out for yourself and see how it helps you because maybe it might help you with one area, but for someone else it might be different too.
Exactly. And they have so many different not just the properties, but like those, like the reasoning behind it. Like rose quartz can help you with like manifesting love, but at the same time, it can also just help you like to love yourself.
Self-love.
It's all intention. Like, what do I want to manifest, right?
Yeah.
So it's like I don't know, you kind of have to do that. Like for me, carnelian is like grounding for me, whereas for you, it's like the courage, right? But it's like, what do you want it to do for you?
Yeah, it's all about intentional use. And
Exactly.
kind of going into like when you buy a crystal, you have to set that intention too. You have to let the crystals, they have energy, they have spirits. Everything has a spirit. And so the crystal spirit, you have to speak to it and set that intention. Okay, I'm now your mother or I'm now your father, and please help me with this specific area in my life.
Exactly.
You set that intention and then you work with it and allow it to, manifest into your life.
Yeah, and that's a big thing, guys. Like, and this is when we kind of go into like some people, they lose their crystals, right? Or crystals will break or things like that. I know like we did talk about this before where like if your crystal breaks, it's also kind of like an expansion of energy too. So it's kind of like your crystal you kind of see it in a visual where it's like maybe my crystal exploded with energy, you know what I mean?
Or there was too much energy that I was holding.
Yes. And like even with like losing crystals is very common, especially with like jewelry too.
Yep.
I will say like crystals will run away from you if you don't use them or you don't, your energy doesn't resonate with them. Like you could have a huge crystal collection, and this is something for me, okay? Like I have a huge crystal collection, and I can't tell you like I have never lost a crystal. Like I have before, and there's so many of them, and at the same time, it's either kind of like you either grow out of them too, or like at the same time, like they also are like, oh, well, you know, you don't really use me, and like
you don't really need me anymore.
Yeah.
I have a different purpose now.
and it's time for me to move forward. And you'd be surprised. I mean, honestly, when I say crystals walk out on you, it's so interesting. They will find a way.
They
really
literally
weird.
grow legs and walk away. I swear. Like all of
Yeah.
a sudden. Well, I mean, it kind of goes back into like you don't use it enough too. So there's
Yeah.
no purpose for it to be there in your life. And so it'll, you know, move on to the next mission it's here to do.
Exactly. And same thing goes for jewelry, you know, like, and I'm really, really sad because I lost this citrine ring that was gifted to me from Linda.
By me.
And this is very recent, but I just don't know why. And I'm like trying really hard. No, I'm not giving up on it, but it really makes me sad. And it's sad because it is, I get it. It's like, it's material, you know, but at the same time, it's so special because it's a crystal that was like, you know, given by someone I love. And at the same time, it's here to help me like manifest my abundance and things like that. Right. But anyways, guys, I don't want to talk about this, but
yeah, I don't want to go into it too, but I'm like, that's funny because, you know, citrine is one of my favorite crystals of all time. And she was never really into those abundance crystals.
Yeah.
So I'm like, you know, she loves rings. Let me get her a citrine ring.
Yeah.
Was it your only citrine ring too?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And the one thing that she needs is gone.
And it's actually so true because Linda was always into the money abundance, like all those types of crystals. Like, I'm like, I never been into that. Like, I
why
just
not?
never been drawn to it.
Yeah.
Like for me, it was always like the love crystals and the softer crystals. You know what I mean? Like the opals and the moonstones and all those. But at the same time, I was like, maybe I do need a citrine. And when I started that, then it's kind of like, oh, well, it ran from me. So, I mean, guys, I tell you. But, you know, like with lost crystals too, like I said, it's like you have to tell them, like, I'm now your mother, you know, thank you so much for everything that you've given me. And like that, you know, the intention is, you know, to help heal me for whatever property it is. And I think it's just so important to just tell them that, you know? And I always saw my crystals as like a family almost because, and I always said this like even like years ago when we were playing with the crystals and I was like, oh, I see them as like, I love them so much, you know, like it's like they're my family and because they're my collection, you know, and at the same time, like when I was younger, I used to play with like, you know, Barbies and stuff like that. So I was always in like a imaginative, animated type of kid. So to me, I was like, remember we would like say, oh, like,
Grandpa Sully,
Mama Lumi. And you know, like if you know, you know, but it's just because, you know, some were bigger than others and some, you know,
But they all have a personality too.
Yes.
That's the thing about crystals is that not one, like each crystal has its own energy and uniqueness to it. Not all crystals are the same. And that's why, like, you know, one crystal might resonate with your energy, but it might not resonate with others.
Yeah.
They all have a personality, and that's how I guess we started naming them too.
Yeah. And I think like one thing people don't realize is that these crystals are like thousands of years old, like way older than we can even think because they are formed in the ground and they come up naturally. And this is where, you know, like what people do is like they mine them, they find them, they polish them, manufacture it, you know, everything like that, and then they will sell them. And it's like we'll see like a bunch of crystals, or you go to like a gem show or something, right? Like they have so many of them, but at the same time it's like every single one has its own like individual, like you could say personality, but at the same time you look at it like this one went through so much.
Yeah, and they come from literally different places in the world.
Exactly.
You know, like crystals grow all over the world. You have to kind of, you know where it's coming from to understand like the history behind it, the energy it carries. Yeah, there's so much with crystals, you know.
And I think that was the first thing I remember when I got into crystals, that my biggest fascination was knowing that they came from the earth, like in the dirt. And that was probably back like 2018. I think I started getting into crystals and I was like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. It's formed in the ground. Like this thing that I'm holding my hand.
It's natural.
It grew.
Yeah.
Like how? You know what I mean? But
Millions
it's like
of years
exactly
being pressured under the earth.
and that's why I say I'm like, wow, like this is so crazy. And I wish people would understand a little more, about them like that, because they're natural. Like we can't be afraid of them, or like, you know what I mean? Like they're amazing.
They were put here for a reason.
Yes, they're tools, guys.
Yeah, it's here to raise the vibration of Earth.
Exactly.
It literally grew from Mother Earth. So
Absolutely.
one thing I do want to mention too is making sure you know where you're getting your crystals from, where it's sourced. There's a lot of different fake crystals and real crystals, and they all have different price ranges. But one thing to keep in mind is that, sometimes the cheapest crystals are not always the best ones for you too, because you don't know exactly where it's from, who were the previous people that have bought it, because everything is energy. Crystals carry energy, so wherever it's been, it's carrying those energies all the way up until it's coming to your home.
Yeah.
So it's also really important to have that hygiene too with your crystals, of cleansing them when you do receive them, whether it's through smudging or selenite, which is another type of crystals that you can use to charge and cleanse your other crystals too. So
that's very big. And I would say, not to like put anything out there on anyone, but there are some sellers out there, like you'll see like their intention too is, not always the greatest. And I have come across some sellers like that where either, they're just kind of in it for, the money or things like that, or maybe they don't even have information on crystals and they're just trying to sell it to you. But at the same time, it's good to know that the person that you bought it from is also knowledgeable
or has an intention for it.
Yes, and that you can trust them at least, because a lot of times like that energy from that seller too is also going to come onto the crystal and then coming to you. And I have come across that situation before where it came to a point where honestly at that point that crystal literally ran from me, and it wasn't even my fault. I felt like and you kind of just intuitively know this because you're like, well, the circumstance, and how I had received it and bought it, it wasn't the greatest one,
And the energy is just off. Or like you receive a crystal and like all of a sudden like there's a lot of negative occurrences in your life. That's how you kind of know either the crystal doesn't resonate with your energy or there's some things that came with it. Sometimes there will be like, not to scare anyone, but like, there are spirits in crystals and not all spirits are positive too.
Yeah. And I mean, I think it's just like I said, it's like, these things, they don't they don't always like talk to us and they don't actually walk on their legs, but at the same time they have energy. So I think that's something to keep in mind. And I think one thing me and Linda learned, which is so funny, like on our journey, when we put the crystals on the bed, is we're like, oh my God, so much energy.
A lot of energy.
We could literally faint.
Yeah.
And you really feel it. Like if you really dive deep, you can really feel how strong the energy is too. And same thing, like even if you're wearing bracelets too, like I'm wearing a lot of bracelets. Of course, it's a crystal episode. I have to.
Yeah.
But, like even having a lot like this it's a lot of energy already too.
And making sure you know that the crystal are compatible with each other, because some crystals do not like to be near one another.
For sure.
Yeah, so like having, crystals that are not compatible and you wear them together, it could actually have adverse effects on you too.
And a few little tips. Clear quartz is an amplifier of energies. So whatever you put clear quartz with, it's going to amplify that type of energy, which is interesting because I have a clear quartz bracelet on right here with my obsidian and also garden quartz and then my black moonstone, which is interesting because, but see here for me, it's like the intention is to enhance my groundedness and my protection, and you kind of just have to know and study them. But at the same time, like that's my intention for it. And Also, another thing is if you are wearing bracelets, just know that the left side is your receiving hand and the right side is your giving hand. So here I'm trying to receive the protection and the groundedness, but here I'm also trying to like give out maybe like love, protection, and the abundance, right? So this is just a little combination that I put together, but it's just something, you know, like you can just kind of keep in mind if you are getting interested into like the jewelry, crystal bracelets. I know a lot of people are like into that and it's so beautiful. And just know like some crystals, like just use your intuition, you know, which ones pair with what. And some of them, they don't like to be together, you know, you just kind of have to like know. And
It's a feeling.
yeah, for sure.
And using your intuition and discernment.
Exactly. So yeah, that's a fun little tip for crystals.
Yeah, we can literally talk about crystals all day, and there's so many different ways to use it. But we can definitely, you know, keep coming out with more episodes on like how you can utilize it in your life too. This is kind of just like a brief introduction of crystals and how we got into it, our personal stories, and also introducing the essence of crystals.
Yeah.
So, with that in mind, we do have a planned live sale for our crystals on Friday, the 26th at 6 p.m. Central Time. So, stay tuned. Check us out at the Essence of Crystals. We have an Instagram and a Facebook. We'll post more details on there. You'll get to see more of our inventory, what we have coming up, and just a lot of new exciting things that we will be putting out there soon. So
Yeah, stay tuned. And thank you guys so much for joining us in our season 2. This is so exciting for us because we get to do and continue the essence of the soul and at the same time branch off with the essence of crystals and do exactly what we love. So thank you all for tuning in and just, you know, being a part of our journey. We love this and we love sharing this with y'all. If you have any questions, feel free to message us, leave comments, anything like that. So yeah, follow us and we're so blessed to have you. Thank you.
thank you so much. We love y'all. Bye.
Bye.